I'm Anthony O'Donnell, editor of Insurance Innovation Reporter, and this is Life Accelerated, a podcast for life insurers who want to achieve digital transformation.
My journey so far has been, I would say, non-linear. I spent quite a bit of time in school, like most folks. So, a lot of studying economics and business, and also spent some time at law school, and just sort of fell into tech almost by accident. I got recruited by MassMutual a couple years after grad school, and started in sort of this data science consulting role. And it was just fascinating to me to see an older company really just trying to adopt data science as a function and as a capability, and being able to be on the ground floor of that was really exciting.
Well, speaking of law, having accidentally fallen into both insurance and technology, I think you might be entitled to compensation.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about where the life insurance industry is today in general with regard to digital transformation, and about what the industry needs to get done, and what it has gotten done, where it stands in its progress.
Yeah, I think, sort of one of the driving factors that have kind of pushed the industry beyond, some of its previous boundaries has been just expectations of customers. Big tech companies, the startup and VC world has really introduced so much kind of just speed and ease of buying, ease of learning, ease of, access to services and products. And I think the insurance industry has historically kind of been this more kind of, people-centric, intermediary-centric, and frankly, it's just slower process that is a heavily regulated industry, not driven by tech and data. But all these things have changed as customer expectations have changed. And now I think, to a certain extent, people just expect things to be faster and easier. And so that sort of created this need for the industry to shift. And I think that shift has taken a number of turns, right? I think a lot of it is tech driven. So you see, over the last probably 5 to 10 years, just this insurgence of insurtech providers, startups that are kind of biting off pieces of the value chain to try to solve some problem in a unique way, and in a way that adds some value to larger providers. But then you also see kind of larger legacy carriers really try to transform from the inside out. And that's looked like a lot of commitment to not only new markets in new distribution channels and trying to reach customers in different ways, but also leveraging technology and data to really kind of transform the legacy infrastructure that a lot of these carriers are challenged with, but also improve the experience for clients and for the people that are selling this business. And so it's really, I think, started with just changing expectations, changing markets, and really speed in other industries that have just changed, sort of what you need to be effective in any market. And then there was COVID, right? So if you think about, our typical model of selling insurance with an advisor or financial professional kind of being the intermediary, it's a lot different when you're doing that in a virtual environment. And so speed of different parts of the underwriting process, speed in the buying process, speed in the servicing process was all required, and became, frankly, just table stakes, which was sort of just another iteration of accelerating that transformation across the industry. So it's certainly been interesting, and I would say kind of a winding road over the last 10 to 15 years.
But you would say the pandemic sped up the transformation?
Yeah, I think it had to. I think the industry, it's a fair question to ask if we hadn't sort of sped up and figured out how to digitize and figured out how to use data to, drive decision making and drive processes. Could we have even survived as an industry? I'm not sure. And certainly would have been very difficult to kind of sustain what you expect as the typical sort of financial and economic benefits as an organization of being a big insurer. It was going to be difficult when you just didn't have access to people the same way you did pre-pandemic.
I wanted to add that you had mentioned that historically the industry has been people-centric, including intermediary-centric. And I wonder whether, in a lot of ways, technology helps to preserve that legacy as technology becomes more people-centric. But what would you say then about how MassMutual has been working to adapt?
Yeah, I mean, so to that point on the people centricity, I definitely think technology has helped. And one example for us in particular has just been the digital tools and capabilities we've been able to put into the hands of our financial professionals, right? So even if they are, especially as we sort of get to fingers crossed, knock on wood, all the things, hopefully on the back end of this pandemic, people are starting to interact more in person, and our financial professionals are really getting out there, but we're trying to put different tools and capabilities in their hands to enable them to provide their services in a more efficient and sort of modern way to their clients. And so it's definitely a marriage between those two things. I don't think it's an either or, and we've discovered some different ways to do that. But broadly speaking, I mean, yeah, you said it. We're 170 plus years old now. And I think we are sort of much like a lot of the other legacy carriers feeling the pressure of, the external market, the pressure of margins being sort of pressed down, and trying to find ways to become more efficient and more dynamic as an organization. And so for us, I would say what we've done is two things. So one, we've doubled down on the things we do really well, and that's build great products for the core insurance market. And we introduce, it's hard to even put a specific number on it, but a pretty significant number of new products or iterations on existing products every year, really in response to the changing market, really in the response to the changing needs of our policyholders and of prospective customers. And the other way we've kind of doubled down is through our financial professional network. And so we've grown that network. We continue to invest in that network, and really have kind of expanded from just an insurance focus to really a broad kind of wealth management focus. And that is something that just heavily aligns to who we are and sort of the roots that MassMutual was founded on. The second thing that we've done broadly is make some big bets. So we've been committed as an organization to provide our products and services to all markets, all demographics, all income levels, et cetera. And so we found some different ways to do that align with kind of the emerging needs of the markets. And so we have things like MassMutual Ventures, which is, I would say, an arm that allows us to sort of stay on the leading edge of different technology and capabilities that are being introduced in the market and maintain a stake in them. Haven Life, which is now I think going on 4 or 5 years as a kind of direct to consumer, transformed into a B2B, B2B2C sort of diversified distribution channel for us to really drive in access to these new markets, whether it's millennials, whether it's people who want to buy differently, whether it's different demographics, et cetera. And so we've kind of married those two things together, right? So just really doubling down on what we do well, and then have some places where we're making some big bets. And, as Haven Life has evolved, we've also kind of taken the underpinning technology and spun that out into Haven Tech, which is, now sort of a full separate subsidiary of MassMutual, providing software services to the industry broadly. So, I think we've found a good balance and a good diversified method for making sure that we've got the things that we do well and do them better, but also taking some risk on some things that we think could hit big later on.
Yeah, so Haven Life is very much in the spirit of MassMutual Ventures, but it's also, you could say, a dual success, because it's succeeding as an insurance distribution company, but also now as a technology vendor.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny. I think, we set out to really disrupt the life insurance market on the distribution side. And but I think what we quickly realized is in order to do that, you need the right underpinning technology. And this sort of goes back to the earlier point on, I think big tech, I think startups and other industries, whether it's e-commerce, banking, et cetera, have sort of shown us the way in some ways that if you can have processes that are largely tech and data driven, you can find, not only amazing efficiencies, but you can create better experiences for users and clients. And so, what we discovered is in order to get this distribution thing right, or to disrupt the way that we wanted to, you need the underlying tech. And in the process, discover that tech scales pretty well and helps solve some of our sort of legacy and older challenges as well. And so we did definitely get, sort of a lot of leverage out of that initiative, and it's now grown into to something much bigger.
Well, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I wanted to address your job title because it implies fundamental changes in MassMutual's enterprise technology. Let's dig a little deeper into the nature of your job.
Yeah, absolutely. So, platform transformation, it does kind of speak for itself. So, as I've said, we've discussed, we're a 170 plus year old organization. We've got plenty of, just call it legacy infrastructure, and you can define legacy however you want. It could just mean old. It could mean, not in the cloud. It could, it could mean any number.
And it'll be true for all of those definitions.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So, I think that, so my role is really just been focused on, how do we help manage that legacy infrastructure, and in the process kind of focus on I think just sort of three core pillars that are outcomes that are important to us. So one is really legacy transformation, right? Which is almost explicitly built into the name of my role, but how do we deprecate legacy systems? How do we manage legacy systems to reduce their cost? How do we reduce our reliance on them? Minimize the different sorts of risks that come with and limitations that come with legacy infrastructure. The second is technology and data. So I think, data as an asset is sort of something that, the insurance industry was a little bit behind on, but has rapidly kind of closed the gap on and now realizes that an insurance company is really just a big data company, right? Every time a person comes in and applies, there's a data point that's created. When you generate a lead or a prospect, that's a data point that's created. When you go through this whole process from quote to claim, there are hundreds, thousands, probably millions of data points that are generated that can give you insight into behavior, that can give you insight into decisions that you need to make, or highlight decisions that you're not making that you should be focused on. And so I think looking at technology and data as sort of a key differentiator and asset for us has been key to drive our decision making internally, and then also the way that we interact with our various constituencies externally. And then the third is digital experience. We've as I said, we've had the bar set by other industries in terms of ease of buying and having, a mobile experience, having a website experience that is delightful and enjoyable and easy and seamless. And so we've spent, a lot of time and effort and focus on ensuring that we can compete and not only be the best in our industry, but also start to compete with some of the experiences that we see in some of those other industries that are a little more mature on that front.
The digital experience pillar, digital customer experience pillar, kind of brings us back to Haven Life, which, as we discussed, has been a very successful startup. So I wonder how we should understand Haven Life as an experiment in customer experience and what that means for the enterprise in the long run. You suggested some of that earlier. Maybe you can elaborate a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Haven Life has gone from an experiment to an imperative to compete. And I think if you look at, competitors that you could throw a bunch of names out there, but if you think of like an Ethos or you think of like a Bestow or other players that have really started to see some of the opportunity in rethinking the way that insurance gets into the hands of clients. And then you see that Haven Life has really sort of kind of led the way and was first to market in doing that and exploring that. And now there's kind of an absolute race to see, who can really crack the nut on this and unlock sort of the underinsured population that we know is there, even just within our country domestically, and what are the needs of those markets. And so, in terms of customer experience, I think Haven Life has just been a great sort of bed for learning, the different needs of the market, the different sort of approaches that we can take with products, with capabilities, with experience to reach a broader market, whether that is on, sort of the vector, along the vector of income, along the vector of demographics, et cetera, life stage, and beyond. And I think, Haven Life has just been almost like a little bit of an incubator for us to explore and try some of these new ways to get to different markets. And a lot of those learnings can be leveraged through Haven Life and through, other parts of our core business as we learn more about those markets and those potential customers.
So with regard to the pillar of data and analytics, how is MassMutual looking at data sources, data analytics, and data science generally as compared to, say, 10 or 15 years ago? Time flies in this insurance innovation world. What are some... Well, go ahead.
I would say, I think time flies now. It didn't always. It was really, really slow. And I think when I started in this role, it was probably 2015-ish. I think data science was relatively new to MassMutual, and we had some great visionary leaders in the organization that just knew we were sitting on a landmine or a gold mine, and just hadn't really realized all the value that we could. And so we rapidly, kind of hired best in class talent on the data science front and the technology front, and also took a concerted focus and effort to get buy-in organizationally to try some things on the data science front. And since then, now we have a really robust data science function with professionals all the way, PhD trained, all the way to college students, and we have a development program around data science and engineering, and university partnerships. And I think it's just really progressed in a way that might have been hard to predict, but it's just become very powerful. And I think you see it both within our organization but across the industry now. Most companies have some sort of models making some sorts of decisions, whether they're in the space of marketing or sales or financial forecast or underwriting or fraud, or the list can go on. And I think our sort of fundamental guiding principle is every decision in the organization, let's make it our goal to have it driven by data somehow, right? It can either be a fully sort of automated decision that is made algorithmically. It can be a decision that's augmented with some sort of specified human expertise, and everything in between. And I think it's been a really exciting journey to see the progress that we've made there.
I can envision you sitting by the fire some years from now, telling your grandkids, "When I started at MassMutual around 2015, data science was relatively new," and they're listening. They're listening with bated breath.
Yeah, I'm sure.
To these stories of lore.
Riveting stuff for them. It truly is an exciting journey. And I think, going back to our earlier conversation, it's now become an imperative. You if you're not doing this, you're probably not competing, and you probably won't be around long. And that's just a reality of the market now.
Yeah, I kid, but my joke is meant to point out that these things are moving very fast, and what seemed new. I mean, I remember those times, and I remember earlier times. What seemed very new then, and very awkward in the way that insurance companies were talking about it and dealing with it, is now so much further advanced. And 10 years from now, it'll be a very different story.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that point was very starkly made to me when we started to have discussions with regulators about modeling and data science, and I realized, oh, at first, you could tell they didn't really know what was going on, and they weren't really asking the right questions. And then now you talk with them, and it's like, oh, okay, this has been around. You've seen it. You understand it. You've gotten exposure to it, and for better or worse, they know exactly what to ask now, and can get to the bottom of just thinking about the governance and the compliance of the models, which is great. I think it's great for clients and for our business. So it's been I think that's a pretty good indication, and I can say that with confidence, having sat through hours of law school. If lawyers know what's going on with data science, I would say it's made a lot of progress in the industry.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's another talking about the regulators. It's another aspect of how technology drives cultural changes, and it's happening very rapidly.
Absolutely.
So your third pillar, or I guess it was your first pillar in this rendition, was legacy transformation. And of course, life insurers' legacy system burden is legendary. And one would expect a significant complement of legacy core systems at a leading incumbent such as MassMutual.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's there's a vast legacy footprint that we have to manage, and I would say that I think point A is clear. We've got all the systems. We need a plan. Point B is clear. We have less of those systems or none of those systems, and we can build strategically on modern technology. I think the magic and the real work is how do you get from A to B, and how do you manage your technology? How do you manage your tech? How do you manage your data and your experience in the interim? And so that has been really what the transformation for us is about, is managing kind of that transition state from point A to point B, and I think we've taken a pretty diversified view into how to manage that. There are systems that we can migrate from to eventually deprecate. There are systems that if you just move this to the cloud, it's not so bad. And there might be sort of different iterations in between, but I think we've spent the right amount of energy and the appropriate amount of focus to identify what the right approach is for managing that, and understanding it might not be a linear path from point A to point B, but that transition state doesn't have to be terrible, right? You can create a great experience along the way for your customers and for your advisors and other constituencies, and you can find efficiencies along the way without sort of fully being to point B. And I think that's something that we've learned and are continuing to embrace as we go along this journey.
So, Sherriff, when we take the three pillars together, it implies, as does your title, a new overall environment or platform. Could you explain what that will look like as all these initiatives reach maturity?
Yeah, I think when we get to point B, just to continue with that visualization of this, I think we would have a minimal, if any, legacy footprint. So all of our legacy systems are deprecated, or at least being managed very efficiently. And at the same time, we've got most of our core business and processes driven through modern technologies that we've invested in modern products. Improving our speed to market so we can respond to changes, introduce new products to the market, introduce iterations of those products quicker to market, respond to regulatory changes, whatever it might be, faster and cheaper, while offering a great experience to our external constituents and users, whether they be customers, advisors, brokers, etc. And then internally, having more and more of our processes driven by clean data from clean systems and from modern systems, and having our decision-making heavily supported, augmented, complemented with data science and analytics along the way.
We talked about the preservation of the legacy of a 170-plus-year-old company, but conserving that precious legacy doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be important changes culturally, particularly as processes need to be reordered in a customer-centric manner.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in total agreement there, and I think one sort of iteration of what that change can look like is the idea of agile versus waterfall, right? I think thinking about making progress iteratively, thinking about, failing quickly, thinking about, embracing mistakes as learning opportunities, whereas, historically it might have been build to the spec and release it and everything goes perfectly, and then you just figure it out if it doesn't. And it's a very sort of one example, I would say, of a change in culture, and I think is required for us to move as quickly as we want to, but does at every level of every organization going through this kind of transformation requires some shift in thinking. And I think having that commitment to that change from a top down level, and then also making sure that, again, that there's a clear purpose and a why behind what we're driving towards, and that people can understand their place in it, makes it a little bit easier as the change happens, and there's that friction that can exist going through that change. If people know why we're doing it and they know how they fit into it, I think it makes it a lot more manageable and even enjoyable for most.
Excellent. So one last question, Sherriff. As you look over the range of transformation initiatives, what would you regard as the 3 initiatives that are indispensable, the 3 that you could not cut from your transformation program?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm just going to go back to the pillars. But I think the first is, doing what we can to manage our legacy infrastructure. And I think, that, again, whether it's migrating from legacy platforms to strategic platforms and deprecating those old systems. But that's a must, because you get so much leverage from an efficiency and an economic point of view, but also just the benefits that come from speed to market and offering a great experience and great products to our clients is critical. The second, I would say, is continued just proliferation of data and analytics. There are, again, so many decisions we make every day, so many processes every day that are taking place in a company as complex as ours. So as much as we can leverage data, algorithms, data science to drive those processes, augment those processes, make us smarter about decisions, make us more efficient about decisions, help us, rule out some decisions that we don't need to use energy making, right? Whatever it might be. I think that's critical for us, both in terms of being an efficient organization and productive organization, but also knowing where our next opportunities are and where to sort of get the most bang for our buck. And then lastly, it truly is the digital experience for our customers and for our financial professionals. We need that to compete, but it's also just a better way to work. It's a more productive way to work. It's a more productive way and a better way to reach customers. And if we can offer a great experience and really build that engagement with clients, even if they don't need or want our products today, if we have the right brand and the right digital experience that they can connect with, then eventually their needs will align to our services, and we'll be able to form really healthy and productive relationships with them.
Thank you for joining us for the Life Accelerated podcast, undertaken by Insurance Innovation Reporter in partnership with Equisoft. For more relevant content to help you achieve digital transformation, please visit equisoft.com/lifeaccelerated.